Thank you very much, Marta. You have given us an extremely dangerous assignment. Our assignment was to indicate how our professions, how our disciplines have weighed in on the question of whether or not the American experiment is in decline. This is a horrible assignment that you've given me, and you've only told me that I'll have 4 minutes in order to reply. And so there are 2 points I'd like to make very briefly. The first is that I can't speak for my entire discipline, the discipline of applied policy analysis and applied microeconomics. I can only speak for myself. The second point I want to make is that I want to acknowledge the role that Rebecca Blank has played and the role that Minnesota has played in helping to formulate my own personal views. So my answer to your question about the decline in the American experiment. Whose American experiment? The 55 members of the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia were all white men. 35 of those white men were slave owners. Whose American experiment are we talking about? Well, I will contest the idea that there is one American experiment. I contest the idea that the notion of the original founding fathers is the foundation for what we now in 2024 should be expecting for our children and our grandchildren and for the future. Rather, I'm going to argue that the American experiment is dynamic. It's been changing. It's been evolving. I have a lot of hope and a lot of optimism that's based partly on the foundation that Rebecca Blank laid. So let me say very quickly that Rebecca Blank, and by the way, thank you, Bob, for reminding me about Rebecca Blank's high school. She went to high school that's down the street from me in Roseville, Minnesota. Roseville produced more Rhodes Scholarship than any other public school in Minnesota. Did you know that, Bob? Okay, it's a pretty good high school. My daughters didn't go to Roseville. But it turns out that Minnesota is a very unique place. The vice presidential candidates for Minnesota, they probably talk too much about Minnesota, but it's unique in the sense that it has a leading intellectual think tank called the Center for the American Experiment. It's the largest, most influential, most well-endowed research center in Minnesota. And what is the Center for the American Experiment about? It is about dismantling affirmative action. It's about eliminating public education or providing vouchers for education, all in Minnesota, but done in a nice way, done in a way that eliminates any concern that we're racist. No, we're not racist. What we're doing is we believe in meritocracy. We believe in fairness. We believe in equality. And so fairness means, I was about to say fairness means people who have been convicted of felonies can't get elected to president. No, fairness means, what do you mean by fairness? I know what efficiency is, but do you mean by fairness equality? Do you mean by fairness the least well-off person is well-off as can be? Do you mean by fairness that there's no envy? And the answer is, my profession, the profession of applied policy analysis, is ambivalent on what fair is. We're good at measuring efficiency, but we don't know what we mean by fairness. With that said, I'll just conclude by saying my Minnesota roots suggest to me that the question of the American experiment is a question that's evolving, and I hope that we within the Academy continue to challenge the notion that the only definition of the American experiment is that of our founding fathers. Thank you very much.